Last month, the Federal Reserve cut interest rates for the first time in more than a decade. This after steadily pushing up interest rates since 2015.
The central bank does not set mortgage rates, but its actions can influence them. With us now to discuss how the Fed's latest move will affect the housing market is Rogers Healy. He's the owner of Rogers Healy and Associates Real Estate. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me.
So, Rogers, where are mortgage rates today, and has it been a positive or a negative move?
Yeah, it's been a great move, and I think that whenever the Fed goes and lowers rates, obviously the motive is to incentivize people to actually make a move. The problem is that when they lowered interest rates, it's at the end of the seasonal, the busiest time of the year is normally spring and summer. So when they lower the rates at the end of the summer, it's not going to have as big of an impact as they would have had if it would have been maybe in early spring or even early summer. So it's been great. I think people are still kind of freaking out because we've had over a decade-long run of things being great. But what we do is we try to bend it like Beckham and keep it going and keep the energy going. But it's been a great move.
So let's look at maybe another factor too. There's a study by Harvard that was released earlier this summer, and it found that the number of people forming households has finally returned to more normal pace, but the housing production has not. So I presume that means fewer houses, a greater demand moving forward. What sort of impact could that have?
Yeah, so there's an impact across the board. So I've talked about this a few times recently. Wages have not caught up with the price of housing. On top of that, the labor costs right now are as expensive as it's ever been. So yeah, there's always going to be a need for housing, but right now the demand for people needing houses, it can't be kept up by the builders. So yeah, as a whole, it's okay, but there's pockets that have happened to go and gentrify in neighborhoods that we never even heard of a few years ago. So yeah, the home building sector of the latest run has been great, but there's definitely still a shortage of production.
So what can home buyers and sellers expect for the rest of the year?
Reality. I think that's something that people that are not in the real estate game, they think they know more than we do, and unfortunately they don't. But what people don't realize is no matter if the market is strong or if it's not as strong, it's still seasonal. And right now, this is normally, like July historically for me, and I've done this for 18 years, July has always been the slowest month of the year for me. And August normally has a little bit of a push, but it is busier from March until June. And that's just the reality. And if you think about it, right now, kids started school this week. People don't want to move the month of school starting. And then come in 3 months, it's going to be the time you're traveling with your families for the holidays. So I think if they expect reality and realize that what they would have gotten 2 years ago is probably still within arm's reach, it's going to make it more enjoyable for everybody on all sides of the deal.
So we've always heard sort of the golden rule of real estate is location, 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 but you mentioned gentrification. And so I'm wondering if what traditionally is called location, 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 if that still stands, if a good location, the concept of a good location is evolving.
Right. So I've been preaching this for about the last 4 years. I think, like you said, real estate has always been based on location, but when things started to do this in the economy and when things started to do this in the real estate market, I think that our rule has changed more to affordability. And like I was saying, there's neighborhoods, I'm based out of Dallas-Fort Worth, but whether you're in Dallas-Fort Worth, you're in Jacksonville, Florida, you're in North Carolina, it doesn't matter. You're going to go somewhere that you feel safe, comfortable, and more importantly, that you can afford. So it's been good for these home builders, especially that are building in production, but the dream of living in the urban core has been out logicked by having a place that you can afford, because what happened a decade ago with the foreclosures and people losing their butts, it's not going to happen again because we're still living in fear, which means they're going to have more wherewithal to make the wise decision.
It's funny, Rogers, because that's what I say. I live in Philadelphia, and that is the constant conversation in Philadelphia, about gentrification, the pros and cons of it.
Indeed.
And clearly, and often what we're seeing more and more are people who normally you wouldn't see moving into certain neighborhoods, increasingly choosing to, precisely for the reason that you brought up, because at least you can afford a home there.
Yeah, and realistically, you're probably not going to stay in your house more than 3 to 5 years. So we've sold properties to people, and then they're 22 years old, and they're like, I want to live here for the rest of my life. And then 2 years later, they call and they're like, hey, we're actually ready to move. Like, okay, shocker. That's just kind of how it goes. So yeah, people are actually getting wiser, which makes our job a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Rogers, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Good advice.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.